Okay, so thank you guys for coming out. Today we're doing funding your education, tips to help you secure the bag. All right, I will have time for questions at the end if you can hold them. But if you have a burning question you have to ask in the middle of the presentation, that's fine too. Okay? So there are several different types of educational institutions that you can go to for your higher education once you graduate from high school. And it's important that you determine which one is right for you because they're all very, very different. So there are for-profit schools and there are non-profit schools. You want to stay away from for-profit schools or what are called proprietary schools. They often lose their accreditation. They are out to make money, not to really educate you. And you end up with a lot of loans usually and a degree that you may or may not be able to use because the school may or may not be accredited by the time you finish. I've actually seen these schools close down in the middle of people's course load. So you're in school and all of a sudden somebody comes in and tells you in 2 weeks this school will close. You have to find somewhere else to go. These schools, again, are out to make money. It's not about educating you, right? They just want to get your money, so stay away from them. For-profit or non-profit schools are great. Just because it's a non-profit school doesn't mean it's a public school. There are non-profit private schools. So just because a school is private does not mean that it's a for-profit school. Okay, so you have to go on the website and be very clear about whether you're dealing with a non-profit or a for-profit. Public schools are those that are funded by the government. The state government usually funds public schools. So people's tax money is what funds these schools. And then private schools are not state funded. They may receive some grant money, but it doesn't come from state taxes. The public schools are going to be cheaper. Those are the schools that you can go to for much less than the private schools cost. Sometimes the private schools are more, they have more notoriety. Sometimes not. So like I went to UCLA for my PhD. That's a public school. UCLA is a higher ranking school than plenty of private schools. So just because it's a public school doesn't mean it doesn't have a high ranking and that it doesn't have a good name that can help you network, okay? And then you have community colleges or four-year universities, all right? A community college is a place where you can get an associate degree or you can pick up a trade and get a certificate. A university is a four-year school where you get a bachelor's degree or higher, all right? You guys understand the difference between the different types of schools? All right, we're going to move along. Be quiet, please. Now we're talking about how you go about selecting an institution. So the first thing that you want to look at is, does the institution have my major? Right? You guys just gave me a bunch of different majors that you're thinking about applying for. If the institution does not have your major, you can't go there, right? You don't want to go there. What you don't want to do is apply to a school as an undeclared major with no idea whether or not you'll ever be able to major in your particular subject. If you know you want to be a nurse, you don't go to a school that doesn't have a nursing program. That just makes common sense, right? Okay, so does the school have my major? And then you ask, did I receive any scholarships or grants from this school? So once I apply, are they going to give me any money to help subsidize the cost of tuition? If they're not going to give me any money, I say move on, okay? Unless no schools give you money, then you sit down and decide. But if you have a school that's going to help you subsidize the cost of your education, that's the school you want to go to, all right? Definitely. Once you figure out whether or not they're going to help you subsidize education, then you ask yourself the question, can I afford to go to this school? So maybe they're not going to give you any money to go there, but you have the money to go. So it's not really a big issue for you. If you don't have the money, and I'm not talking about being able to apply for a loan. I mean, you have the cash money on hand in the bank, you or your parents. If that's not the case for you, then you need to figure out, all right, how do I fund my college education? And I'll just also say, your funding of your college education is not your parents' responsibility. If your parents give you money to go to school, that is wonderful. They are great parents. Every parent does not have the money to give their children to go to school, nor does every parent feel like they need to give their children the money to go to school. Funding your education is really your responsibility. At the point at which you graduate from high school, most of you will be 18. You are an adult, and it is your responsibility at this point. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about how to get that done. And I'm sorry these slides are blurry. I'm going to put it up on YouTube, so don't even worry about it. So there are 4 different mechanisms for funding your education. Scholarships and grants, that's free money. That's money you do not have to pay back. There are, or scholarships and fellowships, grants, that's also free money. There's loans. Loans, of course, you have to pay back. Somebody is loaning you money. You have to give it back at the end of your college education. And you usually have to pay it back with interest, with a lot of interest. Okay? Interest accrues over time. It can mean the difference between years of paying back a loan. You can borrow $10,000 and end up having to pay back $20,000 because of the cost of interest. So you really, really want to stay away from loans if you can. That should be your last and final option to pay for school. The last thing is working. Go get a job. Work. You can work through school, and we'll talk about sort of what that looks like. There are different types of jobs you can have. The best types are those that are funded by the school or funded by federal grants. Work study, right? So you fill out what's called a FAFSA. They tell you how much your need is, and you can get jobs at the school that are for students who are in financial need. These jobs are great because they usually are very minimal hours. They typically won't let you work more than about 10 hours a week, which is good because they don't want you spending all your time working and not studying. Okay, some jobs will let you work up to 20 hours a week, but that's about it. They're also really nice because they realize you're a student. They're typically on campus or somewhere very close to the campus, so you don't have to travel really far. And they tend to be really, really flexible with you. If you say, hey, I got a midterm coming up that I need to study for, they'll say, okay, you don't have to come in this week, or maybe we'll change your hours up for a couple of days. They're typically really, really flexible about that kind of thing. When school break is happening, you usually don't have to work at these jobs because they're on break too. Whereas if you were working a part-time job, say in the mall or at some other location that's not related to school, you got to work there whenever they tell you to work there. They're not usually as flexible with your schedule because they don't have any relationship with the school. They're not a part of the school. They don't close down when the school closes down. So for Christmas break, for spring break, for summer break, they're still open and they're still requiring you to work. And the last way is to work just a regular full-time job, which if you can keep from doing that, please don't work full-time. Please don't even work more than part-time, which is usually 20 hours a week, because it can be a lot. You need time to study. You also want time to do fun things. You want to be able to participate in clubs on campus. You want to be able to do community service. And if you're working all the time, you won't have the flexibility or the time to do that. So I'm going to focus today on funding your education through scholarships, right? Because that's the money you don't have to pay back. We want to get money that we don't owe to anybody at the end of graduation. So a little bit about my journey and why I can speak to this is because I've gotten a lot of scholarships. So I went to San Jose State University where I got my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, graduated in 2005. At San Jose State University, I got 19 scholarships. They range from $250 to $10,000 each. 3 of them I got multiple times, and I can't even see this number because the screen is blurry. And total revenue from scholarships in undergrad was $48,250. So I never took out a loan in undergrad. School was paid for through me working a work-study job for 3 years, my mom helping out where she could, and scholarships. When I went for my master's degree, I got 1 grant, and that paid for the last year of school, paid all my tuition, and also gave me a $700 stipend. And I also got tuition reimbursement from my job. So once you graduate, if you want an advanced degree, if you want a master's degree or higher, work for a company that will reimburse you the money that you spend on tuition, right? Because then that's not money out of your pocket. Yes. I am not an only child, no. Okay. Then I went to UCLA and got a PhD. PhDs are a little bit different because a lot of times you can find programs that are fully funded, meaning they pay you to be a part of their PhD program. All right, so when I went to UCLA for my PhD, I got 7 scholarships. So even though I was fully funded with a fellowship, I still applied for scholarships because I needed money to live on, right? So, and I was not working full-time at the time. I worked what's called per diem as a nurse. So I got 7 different scholarships. 3 were awarded multiple times. These scholarships range in amount from $1,000 to $8,000. And let me just go back and say, where I talked in undergrad about getting $250 scholarships, don't count those out. $250 can buy you a couple of books. Right? $250 can do something. So even if you see scholarships that aren't $1,000 or above, still apply for them because you can use that money. Books are expensive. Books can be upwards of $150 a piece. So you go ahead and apply for whatever you can because all of the money helps. So yeah, when I was at UCLA, I had 2 fellowships as well. One was for 4 years and one was for 1 year. So I was in school for 5 years. Those fellowships paid the cost of my tuition and also gave me $20,000 to $21,000 a year to live on. Okay? And then lastly, when I went to Penn for my postdoc, I was in another fellowship program where we had to get a master's degree. Penn paid for my tuition and we got paid like a regular full-time job. So 1 year I made $65,000, the next $67,250. Okay? So I never took out a student loan. I'm telling you that it's possible. You don't have to believe the hype that the only way to go to school is to get loans and to find yourself in debt because that's just not true. So we're going to talk a little bit now about how you do that exactly. So one of the things I want to say, a quick caveat, the point of me talking to you guys is about how to secure the bag for educational expenses, right? It is not about how to get rich. Getting scholarships is not a way to get rich and never have to work. That's not the point. The point is to be able to cover your tuition and your living expenses so that you can really focus on school. Okay? You hear about people getting like millions of dollars in scholarships. Number 1, that's extremely rare. And number 2, that's not the point of scholarships. Number 3, they can't even keep all that money because the government has laws against how much scholarship money you can actually keep. Once they pay your tuition, you can only get so much of it a year before they tell you you can't get any more money. They don't allow you to just get rich off of scholarship money. So don't think that that's something that you can do. You can't. So tip number 1, condense your scholarship search to increase the likelihood of receiving the monetary award. So basically what you want to do is apply to specific types of scholarships. You want to apply to those that are specifically for people in your major, right? Because that decreases the number of people who are applicable to apply for the scholarship, who are eligible for it. You want to apply to scholarships that are specifically for people at your university, so scholarships that only students at your university can apply for. And then you want to apply for scholarships on the local, regional, and national levels for organizations that you belong to. So as high school students, you might not belong to a lot of national organizations, but when you get in college, you can join organizations that are specifically for your major, that are for things that you're interested in. And those organizations, a lot of times they give scholarships to their members. So don't take it lightly when people say, oh, do you want to become a member of XYZ sorority or XYZ group? Because you can get scholarships through working in those organizations. Tip number 2, network. So you want to get out there and talk to people. You want to let people know that, hey, I'm in school, I'm looking for scholarships. I told my hairdresser that I was looking for scholarships. I told every teacher or professor that I had. All my family and friends knew. So what ended up happening was once I started getting scholarships, people got really excited about it, and they would send me applications. I would have professors that stopped me after class and say, hey, Tiffany, I got a scholarship application for you. Let me send it to you. Right? So you want to put the word out there that you're looking for money to go to college so that people can help you find those scholarship applications. Tip number 3 is to write a winning essay. Every scholarship, not every scholarship, almost every scholarship, I'd say 99.9% of scholarships require you to write an essay. All right? And typically the essay covers 5 different areas. They all ask you to write about the same thing. That's what adversities have you overcome? So what hardships have you had in your life? What are your professional goals or your career goals? What extracurricular activities do you participate in? What awards or honors have you received? And how will this scholarship help you to achieve your academic or professional goals? They all ask the same thing. So what I did once I realized, oh, they're all asking me the same thing, I created documents for myself. I created one document for each of these questions, and I filled out a full page. I answered the question in one page, And then based on the individual scholarship, I would tailor my essay, right? So if they said it can only be 350 words, I would cut out words here and there to tailor it to what they asked for. If they asked for a 500-word essay, I had it. I would just cut out words. If they asked for a 5-page essay, I'd already written 5 pages, so I was good. Right? The more you write up front, you can cut down the wording. That's the easy part. But you want to have this stuff on hand so that every time you go to apply for a scholarship, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You already have the answers to the questions they're going to ask. All you have to do is put it in the format that they're asking for. Tip number 4 is to secure strong letters of recommendation. So you want to make friendly with your professors. You want to make friendly with your high school teachers. When you graduate high school, don't forget about these people. I still keep in touch with several teachers that I had from elementary school, middle school, and high school. These people know you. They watched you grow up. They can write letters of recommendation for you. If you go to church, your pastor, if you're a part of a community organization, that organization, ODAP, Miss V, we can write scholarship letters of recommendation for you. So, but what you want to do is make sure that people actually know you. It's really hard for me as an educator to write a letter of recommendation for a student I don't know. So I have students that come up and say, Dr. Montgomery, can you write this letter of recommendation for me? And sometimes I have to say, no, I can't. I don't know you, right? So people, the students that I have relationships with, the students who come to my office hours after class, the students who sit and hang out and talk to me in passing in the hallway, I actually know them. I get to know them over time, and I feel very, very comfortable writing letters of recommendation for them because I'm not lying on the letter of recommendation, saying, oh, this person has a lot of integrity and is a stellar student. I'm not writing that if I don't know that to be true. That's a lie. I'm a woman of integrity. I'm not going to do that. So you want to make sure that you actually get to know people because you will need them to write letters of recommendation for you, and you want the letters of recommendation to be strong. I sit on several different scholarship committees, and let me tell you, it is really easy to tell when somebody has written a stock letter that they could have written for anybody, and when somebody actually knows the applicant and is writing from personal experience. It's super easy to tell. And when I'm looking at a letter that looks like it's stock and it could have been written for anybody, I throw it away. I'm not giving the scholarship to that person. The person that wrote the letter for you doesn't even know you, right? So you have to make relationships with people. Remember, tip 5, remember that extracurricular involvement is super important. So when people are awarding scholarships to folks, they're looking for somebody that's well-rounded. I don't want to just give a scholarship to somebody who has a 4.0. A 4.0 is really nice. But if you have a 4.0 and you're not involved in any extracurricular activities, nobody really knows you, all you do is sit at home and read books and study, you're not very well-rounded. The well-rounded person is the person with the 3.5 or even the 3.3 that's on the basketball team, that's in a sorority, that does community service. That's the person that I want to give my money to. I'm not really concerned about the brainiac, right? So I want to give my money to the well-rounded person, and I want to give my money to the person who's in financial need. If you can show me that you need the money financially, I'm going to give it to you. So there are 2 different types of scholarships. There's financial need scholarships and there's merit-based scholarships. So some scholarships, regardless of whether you need the money or not, based on what your FAFSA says, they'll give you the money because you're doing good things. You have good grades, that sort of thing. Right? But they still want a very well-rounded person to give this money to. Tip 6 is if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So I talked about this a little bit when I talked about writing essays. What you want to do is have scholarship materials on hand. I remember one time in college, somebody sent me a scholarship application, or maybe I saw it in the financial aid office. Whatever the case, I had to go home and apply for that scholarship immediately because the due date was like the next day or something. It had to be postmarked. But what I did, I had these essays on hand. I kept letters of recommendation that my professors wrote me. I would photocopy them. Sometimes I would ask them, hey, can you write me a generic letter of recommendation that doesn't have an address on it, that doesn't have the name of the person I'm applying to? Just say, dear scholarship provider or scholarship organization, so that I can use it to apply if I have to apply really quickly and you can't turn around a letter for me. I kept transcripts on hand. I'm not even in school right now. Well, actually, I'm going back for my MP. I will be soon, but I haven't been in college in 15 years, and I keep scholarship or transcripts on hand. I have at least 3 transcripts from every school I've gone to at home right now in a file folder. Because if something comes up that I want to apply to and they're asking me for my transcripts, I don't want to spend the time having to apply for my transcripts, waiting to have them mailed to me, to put them in the envelope, to send them off with a scholarship application. I want them at my ready, okay? So when you have all the materials available to you, anybody can give you a scholarship application and say, hey, I need this back by tomorrow. And you can say, all right, got it, I'm ready. Tip number 7, work the minimal amount of time possible. So when you're in school, your job is really to be a student. Your job is not to work outside of school. So you want to work the least amount of time possible to pay your tuition. You don't want to work full time. Really, if you don't have to, please don't do that. It really takes away from your college experience and your ability to just be a good, well-rounded student, okay? If you can get by working 10 hours a week, work 10 hours a week. Don't work the 20 hours a week. The more time you spend working, the less time you have to study and participate in extracurricular activities. And again, those extracurricular activities are what set you aside from other people who are applying for the scholarship. Remember, you're never the only person applying for a scholarship. You're competing against hundreds, sometimes thousands of other people to get a scholarship. So you want to look unique. You want to look special. And one of the ways to do that is to participate in extracurricular activities, which you cannot do if you spend all your time working. Tip number 8, apply. Apply to everything you see. Every scholarship application that comes across your site, apply to it. Don't say, oh, that one's not enough money, or I don't know, I might not get that. Apply to everything. You don't know what you're going to get. You have no idea. You might get them all. You may get none of them. Apply for everything, hoping that you're awarded everything you apply for, okay? And don't get discouraged. If you apply for a couple scholarships and you don't get them, that's okay. Keep applying. Do things to strengthen your application. Ask somebody to look over your essay and give you some feedback. Never submit an essay that nobody else has looked at. Let me just say that. Please don't do that. We make errors all the time in our writing. I still, as somebody who has a PhD and who teaches college students, I still have people look over my writing. I don't submit anything unless somebody else has edited for me because I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So apply as much as you can. Have people look over your scholarship materials. If you don't get the scholarships you're looking for on the first round, that's okay. Apply again. There's nothing wrong with applying for the same scholarship 2 or 3 years in a row. Yes? I'm sorry? What college do I work at? Right now I'm at Drexel University. Okay, so after you start getting scholarships, these are the last 2 tips. This is after you've accrued your scholarships. The way it usually works is that scholarship applications are available typically June through like April, maybe May. Not June, July. Lord, too many J's. January 1st through about the end of April is when most scholarships are due. Most of them are usually due around tax time, which is April 15th. Okay, so once you start getting the scholarships, you'll start getting notified usually by June, July, if you've gotten scholarships or not, and they come in the fall when you start the next academic year. You want to stick to a tight budget, okay? So you have these scholarships, but you can't spend the money all at once, especially if you want to live off of the money. So what I did was I had 2 different accounts. I had a savings account that I hardly ever looked at, and that's the account I would dump all the scholarship money into. And then once a month, I would transfer money from my savings account to my checking account. And I only transferred the amount of money that I needed to live off of for that month. So I had a monthly budget. And once that money was gone, it was gone. I acted like the other money in my savings account didn't even exist. Why? Because I had to make this money last for an entire academic year. I remember one year I think I got a scholarship refund check of like $16,000. So the way it usually works is the people who give you scholarship, those organizations, they write a check to the university. The university pays your tuition and all your fees, your room and board if you're getting housing that way, and then they give you a refund check. So whatever they don't have to use to pay for your education, they give back to you. The money that they give back to you, you have to live on it, right? So you can't just go to the mall and blow all your money. You won't be able to eat for the next year. So create a budget, stick to it, so that you don't, if you guys have to go, it's okay. Remember, I'll put this up. Create a budget and stick to it so that you don't run out of money before the end of the year. You don't want to do that because then you'll really be in trouble. The last tip is to become more involved. So once you start getting scholarships and you have the money and you don't have to work as much, don't spend that time just hanging out with your friends. Don't spend it all studying either. Spend the time, the extra time that you have not working, spend that time joining organizations, being involved in the community, doing things that'll, again, help you to be a more well-rounded person, because when you go to apply for your next set of scholarships, you want to be unique. You want to be a standout candidate. So all this to say, I'm not unique. There's nothing special about me. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not even the most diligent person, right? But I knew that it was important for me to secure funding for my college education, and I did not want to take out loans. So I made it my business to apply for scholarships. Applying for scholarships for me was almost like a job. I spent hours a week sometimes looking for scholarships, making sure I was qualified, getting all my application materials together, and then applying. But you can do it too. So don't think that there's something special or great about me. I never had a 4.0. I'm just not that student. I was a nice B+, A- student maybe sometimes. I got C's every now and then too. But I wasn't, the smartest cookie. I wasn't the person who did the most community service. I wasn't that person. I was just a very well-rounded person who really, really wanted to make sure that I didn't have to take out loans. So I went after everything that I found online or that I got any other way. This presentation is actually based on a blog that I wrote a few years ago. I would teach my students just about how to get scholarships, and I felt like I was saying the same thing over and over again, so I decided to blog about it. And the 2 blog posts that this information comes from are there in those links. You can go to that website and read for yourself basically everything that I said today. Yeah, and are there any questions? Yes. You said, where exactly are the scholarships? So you can find scholarships on the web. You can. I think that the majority of the scholarships I found were, again, those different places that I said you should apply. So university level, I would actually walk into the financial aid office at my university, and there was like a rack where they just put scholarship applications. So I would go in there at scholarship time, which again is about January 1st to about April 15th or so. I would go in the scholarship office, the financial aid office, like once a week and just look to see what new scholarships came up. And I would grab the applications that I qualified for and I would apply for them. So that's one way I got them looking through my university. Again, I said before that when you tell people you're looking for scholarships, they'll send you things that they have. So sometimes they were scholarships that I didn't find, but maybe my professors came across or some of my friends and family heard about, and they would send me the applications. Also, every organization that I was a member of when I was in undergrad had some kind of scholarship opportunity, so I applied for them. So that's where I found the scholarships. I didn't go on when I was in school, they had FastWeb. That was out. I don't feel like I really went on there to look for scholarships. I looked for scholarships in places where my, number one, I was eligible, but also the likelihood of me getting the scholarship was increased. So I wasn't going to apply for things that everybody in America is applying for because, I'm probably not going to get that. I'm going to apply for specific scholarships that I'm pretty sure I'm in the running for. Yes. How early is a good time to begin applying for scholarships? So you want to begin applying for scholarships. Usually you're not even eligible to apply until you're a high school senior. And what I found in my own experience is that the majority of scholarships are available for you after you already enrolled in college, after you have at least one semester or one term on your transcript. So you have to have already had grades posted from a term. And typically, once you're already in your major classes, that's when the scholarships really come around. So while you're a freshman or sophomore taking general ed classes, there are some scholarships that you can apply for. But once you become a junior and you start taking your major classes, scholarship opportunities come from everywhere because you don't qualify for them before you're in your major. A lot of times people give money to very specific causes. They'll give money to people of a certain racial group, people of a certain socioeconomic status or background, and people of a certain major. And so once you actually are in those major classes and they can see that on your transcript, then they'll want to give you money. So you may be able to apply for some as a high school senior, but as you're in school, I found that the scholarships become more numerous. Yes, question.
Well, kind of a question. There is a scholarship for first year kids from Philly for their first year in college. I don't know the exact thing, but I can come back when I come back. I can.
Okay. So she's saying there's scholarships for first year students going to school in Philadelphia. What I'll do too is curate a list of scholarships and we'll put it on ODAP's website. Okay, so you guys can go on there and see what scholarships are available, what you qualify for, and we can start getting this money. Other questions? So you guys, please don't be afraid to reach out to us for letters of recommendation. Like I said before, actually get to know us so that we can know you and write very personalized letters and not something that sounds really generic. Look for scholarships. Don't think that you have to go to college and just apply for loans. Loans are a killer. It seems like a good idea to get loans in the beginning because you don't have to think about them until after you graduate. But when you graduate, those loan officers come knocking. And a lot of times people have the same amount of loans that like I paid for with my mortgage on my house. It just doesn't make sense to pay back that kind of money for your education. And you don't have to. There are so many scholarships that go unfunded every year because people aren't applying for them. Right? So get out there, apply for these scholarships, get this money to fund your education so that you don't have to take out loans and you don't have to work like a dog to pay for college. Okay? So thank you guys for listening. And yeah, we'll see you next week.